Order as soon as our young man is.
Thank you. Just because there's people that want to take her off, if you want to discuss it or anything, just we'll give an update.
Give an update.
We're ready. You're welcome, Frank. Motion to call to order the meeting of September 24th.
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I believe you all have the agenda. I know there are some additions to it and changes. One of them is on the to delete from it. One is Ethics Board, because we were unable to perform interviews for that, so we could remove Ethics Board. I want to thank the residents that came out for the floodplain law. We're actually going to leave it on, but we will have a discussion on it, and we'll let you know where we are on it right now, and some updates, and even some discussions we even had today on it with legal. So I'll leave that on. I'd like to add the NICOM, which is the New York Communication Company lease. I'd like to add on also buildings and ground, part-time worker. Chris, correct? I'd also like to add on approval of a letter from the Department of Environmental Protection, New York City, in regards to water.
Can I add something?
And you would like to add something?
I would like to add the presentation of the 2016 budget.
You know, I apologize, that was not put on here. I thought it was put on. I know it was just handed in today, so I apologize, but of course you can.
And I would like to add an update on the municipal center activities.
So moved as amended?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to start with public input, and again, just for public input, again, we did not remove the one in the floodplain, but if anyone would want to speak on the floodplain, please feel free. Carolyn, come on up.
I just wanted to comment very briefly on my recent vacation. I went on a Mississippi riverboat cruise, which I thought was just going to be a vacation, but I found myself very interested in the river towns along the Mississippi that we visited. So while other people were shopping, I was out talking to the town historian, the reporters, and local officials about the floods. I got very interested in this, and they got sort of interested in the things I had to say. So anyway, I came home and I started looking at their codes, and it's very interesting, and that's all I'll say about now, because they were quite surprised at some of our floodplain laws and thought they were pretty outrageous. So it will be a good thing when you amend these laws as soon as possible, and I thank you for your attention to this.
Caroline, welcome home.
Okay, my steamboat.
I see, I like that. Any other public comment? Okay, if there is no other public comment, does anyone have any announcements of any type?
I do.
Go.
I do.
She's very verbal, isn't she? I like that, yeah.
On Wednesday, September 30th, we will be having our fall rabies clinic at the Highway Garage on Clearwater Road from 4 to 6 p.m. The first 30 people that sign up will be accepted and seen by the vet, and dogs must be on leashes and cats must be in carriers. That's Wednesday, September 30th.
And the vaccinations for rabies, distemper, and heartworm will start at $10 each. Fantastic. Also, I believe this Saturday, is the library fair. Saturday is the library fair. Just wanted to make sure I was correct on that. And that is held at Elton Memorial Library, right on Main Street and New Paltz. Does anyone have any other announcements? No? Okay. I guess just because we have a lot of people here, Kevin, we do have a library, and they weren't supposed to be arriving, some of the board was going to arrive at 8 o'clock. So do you want to make a quick discussion or a long discussion on floodplain, where we are and where we're going?
My understanding is that Stacy, the building inspector, has circulated proposed changes to the DEC, got some comments back, and is incorporating some of those comments into the text, and that the text then will be circulated back to the town board members and to Joe Moriello, the town attorney, and that should be happening in the next day or two. So I think we're closer to having the board consider setting a public hearing on the amendments. Jeff, did you hear anything else new today?
Just to go along with Kevin, the DEC, which also will include the FEMA comments, have been sent back. There were some substantive language changes, I guess call it.
Substantive?
Either one.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
Go with either one. Changes that they were interested in, and so they are now with our attorney, with Joe Moriello. For us to set the public hearing, we'd like to do this in October, just so you all know, and so we may have to do a special meeting. We'll let everyone know, we'll be announcing it on the web, because we may do a special hearing along with starting with some of the hearings on the 2016 budget. So we may combine the two of them. So that's really where I am. They do have, again, some changes in there that they would like to see, just so we include what FEMA has asked for, and without taking that out and substantially changing their language, right, Kevin? Those would be required. So I apologize, we thought we would have it ready, but the language from them was not quite prepared. So I appreciate you coming out, the residents that came here, we appreciate it. And also, if you guys want to go on, and you'll find my address, or you'll find also our assistant Carol Connolly. You can also find Susan Zimmerman. If you want to email, give us your emails. We'll make sure we do have a special meeting on it just to announce it, but we'll also be putting it up on the internet under the floodplain law heading. So as soon as we get what the proposed law will be, we'll put it right up on the web, and we'll let you know. Or if you go on and sign up on it on the web, we'll let you know as soon as we get it.
Well, I have a couple of, I guess they're questions or comments, maybe a mix. When I was reading it and looking through what I've received, I didn't see any documentation that would show how these changes have impacted the residents that are living there under the constraints of this law. I would like to learn specifically how many building applications for repairs to damaged buildings were received from residents of the floodplain district, how many were denied, is the process for a building permit in the rest of the town for a non-conforming use any different from the process in the flood district. Subdivision potential, can we get a list of sites that would be able to provide access for a new town road if the law is amended as proposed? Also, I know Dave Clauser was involved in the development of the law. Of course, that was long before I was up here. And I'd like to learn what Dave's reaction is to the proposed changes as well. Also, maybe this has already occurred and I'm just needing to get up to speed, but has the Ulster County Planning Board reviewed these proposed changes? What about our ENCB? Maybe there are others of our volunteer experts that would be beneficial to ask them to weigh in. And I'd also like to know, I guess from Tricia, have any houses been sold in the floodplain district recently? Were buyers able to secure a mortgage successfully? And do they have flood insurance?
Well, to answer some of those questions, Marty, I don't think we'll circulate until we actually have a document that we're comfortable with circulating for comments. Your first line of questioning was you didn't understand the impact that the current law would have on residents?
Yes, correct. And don't know how to learn that except to ask the questions, how many building applications have residents out there made to the town since the law was enacted, under the terms of the law where they've had flood damage. So we could try to gauge, is this a problem as the law is written, affecting people? And if so, is it affecting them in a way that constrains their ability to enjoy where they're living?
The way the law is, the way, hold on a second, Cal.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us can answer that question, Marty. I mean, we live there, and frankly, we've been profoundly discouraged from even attempting to get permission to do a lot of things on our property. So looking at the documents that have been denied will not give you an accurate picture at all of the damage that it has been doing to us.
But then perhaps there are other ways to gauge that impact that are quantifiable.
Well, the quantifiable part of it is, when you read the law, it will result eventually in people not being able to rebuild their homes as an absolute right. Instead, it's going to be a privilege, and that privilege will be made, that determination of your privilege or non-privilege will be made by a board. And in my case, I would hate to have it populated by some of the people that are, have attacked me in social media, because then that means that my house wouldn't be able to be rebuilt if I'm in that specific district. And if somebody's going to tell me in the future that I can't rebuild my house and I can't live there with my family, there's going to be some damage done in this community. So
My issue is not lack of sympathy for the folks that are living there. I kind of looked at this as I read through it and saw maybe there are at least two different categories of issues. One is those of you folks that live there now, and others are who might want to come in. And I see those personally from reading this and from looking at the zoning section, chapter 140, and what the legislative intent was, that if I take the second one, those that might want to come in, I think that's the easier one for me personally at this point with the information I have. And as I said, I don't have all the information. That's why I delineated and listed what I would like to still learn. To allow future development in there by changing the law from what was considered, to me, says we're only putting more people in harm's way. So that's the future.
But Marty, to answer your question on that, and this is why data is important. If you were to ask Stacy for the number of building permits that have been issued for west of the Wallkill in that area in the last 5 years, she might say 2. And if you're going to look for building potential, if you were to actually break it down, and you could, to determine the maximum build out there, it's de minimis. And the reason why it's de minimis is because you have federal wetlands, you have the associated buffers, you have state wetlands, you have local wetlands, you don't have the appropriate road frontage, you don't have the particular kinds of lots that are more beneficial for development. Most of these are very narrow, long lots. Most of them, the larger ones, are dedicated to farming. So when you really look at the number of homes in this flood area, and if you were to actually do the homework to eliminate each parcel based upon the characteristics I just described from further development, you'd be left with very little development potential out there.
Then the impact of changes would seem to be unnecessary.
Well, except that you're going to end up with no people living out there eventually, because the law says that if your house is damaged, substantially damaged, you can't rebuild it if your house or any portion of your driveway or any portion of the public road leading to the driveway is more than 1.5 feet below the 100-year floodplain.
Right.
So, and all of good portions of Springtown Road are. So that's the public roadway leading to your private driveway. So my point to you is, the law was written in order to prevent, it was deliberately written. It wasn't written out of ignorance. It was deliberately written that way. When you look at other floodplain laws, they don't have these last two pieces to them about your private driveways and the public roadways. Whoever wrote that knew that Springtown Road was more than 1.5 feet below. So knowing that, putting that in there, they effectively eliminated the right to rebuild without permission. In this country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it shouldn't be abridged by any local law. And in this particular case, you're abridging a fundamental right that the people west of the Walk-Hill deserve. And if we're going to sit up here and say that some board that's going to be appointed by some administration or future administration is going to rule on a variance, my God.
Variances.
Now, wait, well, then more, just so you know where Kevin's coming from on that, is that there is the relief mechanism or the pressure valve that allows someone to rebuild is under the control of the ZBA. So they would be allowed to then let someone rebuild or substantially rebuild their home or do substantial repairs.
Maybe. You'd have to beg for a right that's supposed to come with you. When you buy your real estate, it comes with a bundle of rights. And the only way you're supposed
Well, wait, one second, let me, if I can just finish, and I hear what you're saying, I'm sorry. And I apologize, nothing, at no time should anyone ever consider going before a ZBA or a planning board and feel that they're begging. I have not seen that. I've been going to those board, and I'm sorry, I've been going to those board meetings for 8 years, and
that you're still
it,
dependent.
Please come up and
You're
speak.
begging, you're making
Carolyn,
it illegal, and we're making it better.
Carolyn,
I didn't
if you-
finish.
If he allows
I-
speaking, please come up here
Yeah,
and
but
state your name.
but I didn't finish what I was saying. So really what it was is the original law and the intent, and again, I apologize, I'm not trying to diminish your rights. Simply saying that those boards were never created as an atmosphere, and if you feel that there's an atmosphere in our ZBA or our planning board that you need to beg before them, please contact me offline, discuss it with any of these board members, because that means we have another problem. These are very well dedicated residents of this community
I'm sure they
who
are.
do everything under their power to ensure
My point
the
is
health
that
and
the
safety.
bundle of rights that comes with
Please.
your
Again, but I understand what you're saying, so,
can
but
only be denied if, say, through eminent domain or overwhelming
Right.
public good or something that has to do with the community,
I think-
which is not the case.
But I think what we're trying to get to here is they were originally designed to protect human life and health and the welfare of all residents. So I'm not sitting here disagreeing that these should be, that the changes, we've worked very, very hard on these changes. I worked hard on these changes today. Kevin was on the phone with our attorney. We had Stacy working on them, worked on them several times. We got comments back from William Netchman from the DEC, who is the head of flood control for the DEC. He is the chief of flood control. So we're working very, very hard to get a solution to this. So we're not diminishing at all what you're saying, but please, I don't want to diminish or be derogatory towards any of our boards.
No,
So
and I'm
please-
not trying to
yeah.
be. And I think
don't
Jeff's
want
point,
anyone-
Jeff, your point is well taken, Jeff. Look, the people that serve on our boards are good people. It's just that you don't want to give, the ZBA really is designed to give people relief from the strict structures of certain laws. If you fence, if you want a 7-foot fence instead of a 6-foot fence. But the ZBA has never dealt with an issue, a fundamental issue about whether or not you can continue to live in your home. I mean, so this is going to open up a whole new paradigm here in this community. And what really troubles me is that in this community, there's two sets of philosophies. One is that I can do whatever I want with my place, but you can't do whatever you want with your place. So, and in this community, look, open space is a priority. So this law was written by certain people to ensure that your homes will become open space. There's just no other way to interpret it. As I said to you before, Carolyn, either you're ignorant when you put those provisions in and don't understand them, or you do understand them and you put them in there intentionally. And that last piece really troubles me, that they were put in deliberately.
Is there documentation supporting that?
Well, Marty, either you...
I wasn't here
I know you
paying
don't.
attention to that
But I'm
when it
saying
was done years ago.
either you know or you don't know. And if you don't know, you should get the answers.
Well,
I think
that's what I'm
most-
seeking is answers. I'm sympathetic to the plight of the folks that are living there. I advocate for them to be able to rebuild what they have. However, if their driveway has been washed out from a flood, then the question from a safety point of view is how can the town deliver its emergency services to them when they've already experienced that? And it seems like a reasonable solution is raise it to some calculated level. In this case, it's minus 1.5 feet from the flood elevation. And that has been perceived by others that have reviewed this, helped to craft it, to say that's a reasonable level. So I look at this somewhat like the referees.
Excuse me, we're not responsible for the road.
Your
The
driveways.
road, the road,
Well,
you know-
that's another issue too, and there should be efforts made to deal with the flooding on the road.
Well, the
That-
road's a county road.
Yes, it is, that's right.
So we shouldn't even have anything much to say about it.
Well, there are funds that the county has that have been allocated for certain things. It takes a long time to get monies into the funding stream for anything, especially roads. And I am not knowledgeable enough to know how the proposed dollars that are sitting up there in Kingston are going to be allocated or reallocated away from us. So I can't speak to the roads. So I speak instead to the driveways. If FEMA is willing to insure the property and step up and say, if your driveway gets washed out again, we'll pay you to replace it as it is,
But you
then
say
I find that a reasonable
most of us have
criteria.
had no flood damage, our driveways are dry.
Then why is it an issue to you?
Because it happened once, and the town decided that this would be a good chance to come in supposedly to save us from ourselves, but we don't need it, and we don't want it, and our properties are dry. We're in a dry spell now.
Yes,
If
we
the
are.
planet is warming, if we're going to be even drier, and this will never be an issue except to deny us the right to...
Climate science suggests that while we may be drier, and we are in a dry spell now, and we've been in one that's probably going to last until October, I'm told, and then it'll get wet again until next spring, and we'll probably go back into drought. Different cycles than what we
But
have
the Central
experienced.
Hudson also is now working with us on the bladder, which was a big issue with flood.
It's
And
filled,
due to some good people who've helped work with Central Hudson to learn to relieve their bladders and the water level before any storms, we haven't even been flooding like we
So-
used to.
Do we have documentation from them
So
that
here's the critical piece. There's a philosophical difference, and the data is really important. I think once Marty has the data, he will understand that the build-out out there west of the Walk-Hill is de minimis, and that it is not appropriate to have a law that says if your house is damaged, substantially damaged,
And not by flooding.
By fire,
Anything.
by a tree falling.
if
Carolyn,
it's...
I am not opposed to changes that would allow you as a homeowner to rebuild your home to what it is now.
But you
That's
seem
not
to
allowed
be.
in here.
You seem to be, but I'm going to tell you, it's a
I can
bad
seem
law.
to be, or you can listen to what I'm saying. I'm not
Yeah,
opposed
but
to
well,
modifications
you
that
that-
allow you to rebuild your home to what it is now. I am concerned about driveways specifically, because that's how do we get emergency vehicles to a residence. If they
Okay,
haven't flooded,
okay,
it's
now
not an issue.
go legislate that everybody who has a steep driveway has to change it because it's dangerous and ice and snow. Go
Be an issue.
legislate everybody who has any damage. Okay, if you people make a big issue of this, I'm gonna go around and survey every dangerous driveway in every kind of condition and demand that you legislate the same thing for them.
If your driveway
I
hasn't-
will.
If your driveway hasn't flooded, it doesn't seem like it's an issue.
But the town is saying if a tree falls on your house, you'll have to go before the board to let them decide whether or not you're able to mitigate the damage. Meanwhile, you've been paying homeowners insurance and flood insurance all this time. The lawsuits will fly. It's really, you're taking away from us a right that we should have.
I'm not, as I said before, I'm sympathetic to the homeowners that are there now. I'm not opposed to modifications that would allow to rebuild using whatever the same regulations, limitations, constraints are that would occur to me who lives on Jansen Road.
Absolutely right.
I have no
We're in
problem with
agreement
that.
there.
driveways I have a personal issue with, from what I've read, when I have the data that Kevin is referring to. I could come away with a different point of view. I said to the board members in an email just shortly before the meeting that I was ready to have a discussion, but I can't have a definitive discussion because I haven't seen what Joe Moriello's comments are. I haven't seen DEC's. If I've received them today, then I haven't read them. So I'm happy to have the dialogue. I am sympathetic. I do think that what you have now, just like what I have now, I should be able to rebuild without having to go through anything more circuitous for you than what I have to go through. As I read these changes, though, as a layperson, my conclusion was, again, while I want to wait for Joe Moriello's comments, it seems to me that the changes proposed totally gut the law and allow those that are in the situation you've described to not have to apply the same regulations and rules that elsewhere have to be applied.
That's not true.
Well, that's why, Carolyn, I said I'm willing to have a conversation.
just having
I
a
don't
conversation at
have
this
the
point.
information from Joe Moriello, who's been asked to review it. So I could simply sit here and say, I'm not ready to discuss it, I'm not ready to discuss it. I'm willing, but I am willing to share with you what my philosophy is.
Okay, but I just have to say, you have to think about the legal situation which we have been put into, because this is government overreach, which it turns honest citizens just trying to do honest, normal things like sell their house when they need to, into criminals.
Well,
Because there is no way for us to sell our house being totally honest about these laws and the way they impact the future value of our home. If we are totally honest and really tell people about what this law does, there is no way we can ever sell our home ever. And that seems like confiscation of our property without any compensation whatsoever.
Well, actually, there is a house on Springtown Road, a friend of mine was looking at it just about 2 weeks ago and asked me what I thought, and I said, well, you better ask your realtor about those flood laws, because it may be a bad situation to invest in a property where later on you may not be able to rebuild. And he actually has bought a house in town and not that house. So that's just one example, and this thing, just repeats itself.
Well, it could be because of the law, or it could be because prudence says, don't live in a flood zone, especially with climate change.
And I think one thing that we've all seen here is the reason why we are taking this so seriously. And like I said, there were conversations even as late this afternoon. And yeah, Marty, you did get the comments, not from Joe Moriello yet, because he hasn't commented yet. They went out, they were about 9 o'clock this morning, 10 o'clock this morning, so you may not have even gotten them yet from the DEC. We have not gotten comments back from Joe Moriello. So we need to see those, and we'll need to have a discussion on those. So I left it on here and I apologize, Dan.
Yeah, no,
And I left it on here because I don't want anyone to think that, none of us are taking this lightly. I said what the intent of the law was, and was the intent. So it's not that we were sitting here to, what Kevin was saying was to make restrictions or take away life or liberty or the pursuit of happiness, but we were doing it to try to
It's our right to our property.
And again, I apologize, Caroline, I just ask that you not yell at the board. We're not yelling at you, and I understand, because I live in this community too, and I've lived here for a long time. I just ask that you not yell at this board, and that we have many boards involved in working on this, and we're working very hard on this, and we do want the changes to take place before this year ends. And Marty's comments, I apologize if you took Marty's comments in the wrong way, but his comments is that he's looking at this in a way to say what protects everyone, especially the people living in that district. And that is the intent of this. We're not looking to take away rights. To Kevin's point, to say that we want to ensure that everyone's rights stay in place is what we're looking at. The current law in its current form has been upheld by the courts. We still don't agree with that as a board, though. This current sitting board here says, no, you know what? Even though it can be upheld in court, and it was litigated against in court, and it was supported in court, we still believe that we need to change it for the benefit of the residents living in that district, and that's what we're doing. And I apologize. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I actually really appreciate that you added that. I do want to just tag along here and kind of reiterate what Marty said. I think it would be good if we could hear something from Dave Clauser. And I don't even know if the ENCB is going to want to comment, but we should maybe give them the opportunity. I sent them the original
I can
law
go, and
that
I can
Kevin
go
sent
back,
out?
we do have comments from a couple years ago, I can go back and, we could get new ones we wanted to on the revisions of it, but, you know, when we get our attorney's opinions, and then we will be discussing this again, you know, and then when Kevin gets those, he will also be discussing those again, so.
But Jeff, doesn't it seem, I mean, we came here respectfully, we've been here many times, this has gone on for years now, and we are not coming in here saying scrap the law or tear up the law, or it was very specifically, you know, this line and this phrase and this particular thing. We haven't come demanding to gut any law, we're just saying we need these few modest changes to ensure that we have our property rights. So for you to address us as if we're talking about gutting anything is really.
I apologize that it was taken that way,
That's my interpretation of it,
and that was
I
never.
haven't seen Joe's comment.
And I apologize, but it's some of the ones that came back from the DEC, and I apologize if you took it, that's not at all what my intent was what I said. They really are, a lot of it is wording in it. I never assumed any of you wanted to scrap the law, I wanted to get rid of the law. What I simply was trying to state to you, and not to impress you, but impress upon you, is although the law is legal, you have a board sitting here that completely agrees it needs to be changed. And we are going to do it in the legal way. The changes that were sent to us, they were, those of you that going home, it was all under section 82, where a lot of the changes, and I know most of you have the law if you go and look, where you'll see where the DEC and FEMA both feel there's some language we need to change under that section. And I know none of you are asking to scrap it, and I appreciate that. I know you guys understand why we do need to have some type of law. To Kevin's point, when I was on the board, this was enacted when I was very new on the board, and you know, it's what makes being on a board for a while so important, and it's the experience you gain. I was under the impression, and I discussed it later with Kevin and with you, Carolyn, which was the law, we were told this was the law that was needed, or everyone was gonna lose insurance. And we can go back, and Denise, you remember that even, we were told, it turns out later on, we found that that wasn't the case. It was not about losing insurance, so I got 5, 6 nodding heads. It turns out that was not the case, and had we had an attorney on the board at the time, we probably would have modified it more at that time. So now you have a board, we're very serious about changing this. Fully anticipate, you know, if we can get the comments back from our attorney, who I spoke to all of just a few hours ago, we can get them back within the next few days, and early next week. We will be setting a special meeting just to set up a public hearing. We would like that to happen sometime in October. There are some benchmarks that you need to hit, also based on the publishing record of when the paper can get it out. You need 5 days of notice, post, put it in the newspaper. I anticipate discussing this again in October, and then being able to vote on it prior to year's end. So, again, we are taking all of it into account. And again, I appreciate that none of you have come to me or called me individually or emailed me individually to say scrap the law, because that was never the intent. The intent is to have a law in place that protects us, allows us all to get FEMA insurance that live out there, and yet does not have you, and I will borrow your phrase, I apologize, but have to go to beg, but it's not beg, but to have to go through the relief agency of a board that then needs to make a decision, to which Kevin is probably very correct. They don't, it's not something, Kevin, what is the correct phrase? It's not something they would have seen, they don't see frequently. Would that be an accurate phrase?
See, ever.
Ever would be a much more accurate phrase. They don't see this ever. The majority of our zoning board of appeals sees more things along the lines of setbacks, variances, fences, pools in the front yard, sheds is more of their outlet. So we do appreciate it. I did want to keep it on the agenda though, because I do respect that you're all here. Like I said, I just don't have a lot more. I think you now know where the board stands. I would gladly take.
I'd be happy to go over. I've read through it. I've read through what's called a red line markup of the document, maybe the one that you all were looking at today. And I've made my comments. I'd be happy to sit with you. It would be ideal if Kevin was also there so he can tell me as a lawyer where I'm misinterpreting things. Some of them I agree with Carolyn. Some I think there may be alternatives, 25%, 50%. Why are they those lower percentage? and others that I have more of a problem with.
I've looked at the laws out in particularly Hannibal, Missouri, which I think is a very interesting town, and you can sort of compare it with New Paltz in a lot of ways, you know? And they had a flood in 1993 where the Mississippi rose 30 feet high and stayed about that high for 4 months. So when I was telling them that I had seen floods of about 19 feet, but they only lasted for maybe 4 or 5 hours, they laughed themselves sick. Now I looked at their code, nothing like what these restrictions you have in their code. All the references to FEMA, all the, you know, I mean, I looked at Grafton, I looked at Alton, I looked at the Quad Cities, I looked at their codes. Nothing like this sort of micromanaging, we know better than the residents know stuff you've got going here in New Paltz. Nothing like that. And here they have to live through floods that are truly dangerous and damaging. I mean, our floods are a big joke next to what, when you look at the FEMA laws, they were written to cover situations like that one in Hannibal, or coastal cities that are terribly at risk for these ocean surges, and where climate change will really hit them for sure. Not maybe, like us in our floodplain. Maybe. It'll be bad, maybe it'll be worse, maybe it'll be better. We don't really know. Nobody knows.
The scientists say it will be more severe storms that will last longer, but they'll be in different periodicity than what we see now.
Yeah, but that has no real, that doesn't mean anything in terms of how it's going to impact us on the floodplain.
Well, it means it's more
truly
likely to
doesn't.
be floods, Carol.
No, it doesn't
Yes, it
mean that.
does.
No, look, I've lived there. My neighbor lived in my house in 1955 when we had a pattern of floods just like the one we had in 2011. Now, she lived in my house, and I also invited her back into my house for that flood in 2011. And she was telling me, her memory is very, very good, that the floodwaters did not come up as high in 2011 as they did in 1955, when they had the same pattern of one serious flood and then a month later another serious flood.
Irene and Lee within a week and a half.
Yeah, well, but it was the same pattern and a drought in Texas. Now, every inch that the water rises in that floodplain, it spreads out over more and more and more property. So, okay, let's say it's worse. Let's say it rises another 2 inches. This is not a material difference, okay? This is not, we're far enough inland that we don't get the coastal surges. We don't have a wild, uncontrollable river like the Mississippi. We don't have these sort of risks for you to be micromanaging the way we live in our homes that we've had for hundreds of years. My house was built in 1820. It has never been damaged by floods. Who are you people to tell me about that my house can't be rebuilt if the tree falls on it, and I can't sell it in an honest way to somebody who wants to live there. In an honest way, revealing the negatives. Who are you people to stand obstacles like that in my way from just doing what ordinary, honest, hard-working citizens do? And believe me, most of us are long-term residents out in that floodplain. We love our homes. They aren't disposable items, like people who move from apartment to apartment or sell their home every time they get a raise in their salary. We love our property. We take care of it. So why are you punishing us this way? Why?
Carolyn, I didn't punish you. I came in here this past year and I've been asked to look at revisions to the law. So I've educated myself as best I could as to what were the circumstances that caused it to be passed in the first instance. I've looked at the changes that have been proposed. I've raised questions. That's my due diligence. Why would you vote for me if I don't do my due diligence? I haven't finished doing it. I'm not drawing conclusions. However, when one looks at a law, then they have to say, well, how do I look at it? Do I go back and start all over again? Or do I look at it as it is now and say, here are proposed changes, how do I review those? And my way of looking at that includes considering, like the NFL Football League does, when there's a questionable play on the field, they review that and they say, is there compelling evidence to change the ruling on the field? Well, that's part of what I'm doing. Where's the information, the data, as Kevin says, that shows why this is hurtful to residents? I see some changes. You can only rebuild 50% under some circumstances, 25% under other circumstances. I don't think there should be those kinds of constraints. If I lived there, I wouldn't want that on me. I can get comfortable with those kinds of changes. There's some I haven't yet gotten comfortable with. When I see the information from the lawyers, maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I will at least be considered in what I conclude.
And Carolyn, just to answer you though, is you're asking who we are, and I apologize again, this is not meant in a demeaning thing. We are the board that's in front of you trying to change this law. This law was written under a different administration with different board members. None of those the only board member, I had just come in, and you guys all agreed when we were all told when this law was written just a few years ago that it was to ensure that no one loses insurance, that we're at risk at losing insurance. So when you yell at us and tell us like, who are we? Don't look at us like, who are we? We are your partners with you here. We are taking everything that you have said and we have put it into the law. We are the ones that are sitting here trying to change this law. That's who we are. And that's really, that's the changes that we are looking for to ensure everyone is safe.
Let me just say one more thing, is that I think what also frankly astounds me looking at all this is why towns should have the burden of trying to figure out their own laws about this sort of thing. We have the DEC and we have FEMA, and they have a lot of rules, a lot of standards, a lot of written stuff now, particularly over the last 5 years. It's been more clarified, it's more detailed. Why don't we just try to enforce that?
Well, and there's a very long answer to that, which I will gladly bring in an attorney to explain to you. The short answer is both the federal government and New York State has completely pulled back and is doing nothing to protect wetlands, is doing nothing about floodplains, is doing nothing about flood laws. They have put that on to the local communities. So to use a simple term, these are unfunded mandates. There's your answer. Wetlands right now, there is no one out there. If you do not have a local law on wetlands, they're not being protected. The federal government, for the most part, is not protecting them. Neither is the DEC. It's up to the local communities. When it comes to flooding, the federal government, FEMA, gave their guidelines and said, here, do you guys remember the first FEMA map that we got? Do you remember the FEMA map we got? It had, I don't know if you guys remember it. I even remember looking at it and saying, oh my goodness, this cannot be correct. I think Carol's nodding her head, yes. It had huge parts of Plutarch Road on it. And I remember looking at it and like, there is no way that Plutarch Road could possibly be in a floodplain. Now, it is a giant wetland, it is swamp. I grew up playing out in parts of Plutarch and in the Plutarch swamp. But it certainly cannot be classified. The federal government came in. We took that out of the map because the local jurisdictions, Carolyn, have to do it because the federal government does not have neither the manpower, the budgets, nor the tools to be doing it. The state does not have it. The DEC does not have it. I'll use the example right now of managing of stormwater. It's the MS4. Every community does not need to become an MS4 community. We have chosen to do this. What that does is the management of stormwater runoff of surfaces that will not absorb it any longer because we take it seriously. Because the DEC does not have the manpower, nor tools, nor budgets to do it any longer. It's a big project. We've been working on it for years, and it's still going to be worked on. We will have a completed version by spring of next year, because we need to have it, because those laws aren't there, Carol, and I wish they were. But this is something that local communities need to make the decisions. The local community comes out and says, wetlands aren't important, then we'll scrap it. They come out and say, you know what? I don't care, pave anything you want, we'll let the water run wherever it might go. we'll do it, but I can guarantee you, we're not that community. I've been going to planning board meetings for 10 years.
Yeah, but here's an irony. You're saying all that, but there's a lot of farms out there, and they have a very different law than we are governed by. They're protected. Yet many of them are the ones that are playing with the floodplain, the wetlands, putting their own roads in those floodplains, moving and regrading on that land that we're not allowed to, affecting the water levels.
And that is possible, and you're right, that
It's not possible, it's reality.
we are a right to farm state, and like you, growing up here in many generations, my mom can tell you the days back in the 50s when there was a cabbage farmer out on the flats, and New Paltz stunk like rotten cabbage for about a month, because a farmer came in and planted all that, and then when it flooded, there was nothing they could do. It was an interesting case, but absolutely, you are correct. Now, we are a right to farm state. We do protect our farmers, and this community has taken farmers in as part of our economy. That is, agriculture is a big part of our economy.
Even though they have regraded against what would be legal and worked on wetlands that were not supposed to be touched.
If you do have those examples, please notify our building inspector office or notify me. Let our building inspector's office know, because we do have steep slopes and grading laws. We do have laws that do protect streams. The DEC does have laws protecting streams, so if you
Every
do,
time they've been reported, it's been told they're protected.
and it is possible it's within the law, and maybe that's part we need to look at, but that is a different part than this, and I didn't mean to spend.
That's protecting the floodplain on Springtown,
Yeah.
not us.
But anyway, I just understand our frustration after
Oh, we do.
years of this. We came in July 10th, we were here for a meeting, and that was going to proceed, we thought rapidly. Next week is October, and you're thinking that maybe by then you'll hear back from a lawyer and hear back, and our heads are spinning, and now we're gonna be into next year, and we just.
Well, I never, did I ever say next year?
The DEC
No,
comments.
wait, I never
No.
said next year. No, that's what I said.
Let me
Always.
just
But yeah.
chime in here. The DEC comments that were sent to us today aren't extensive. It shows on one page on my iPad here. So they're not substantial. They'll be going over to Joe Moriello, and then what Marty and myself and Dan and Jeff want, Susan, is a final copy that we then can circulate to everybody. And then I would imagine that copy, once we're comfortable with it, will be circulated to the county planning board and every other agency that is entitled to a copy. But just for your own personal benefit going forward, take a more active role in your local government, please. Things go on all the time that you're not aware of. And when your community wants to pass a local law, show up at the public hearings, really take the time to read it, and think if there are any unintended consequences that you want to point out to your fellow town board members. I think it's really important that you become involved in what happens in your community. Sometimes you just trust it to 5 people up here, and these 5 people up here, we don't always get it right. And so it's nice to have Ms. Paulson here, who's now an expert, who understands each provision of the law. And I actually encouraged a lot of people in this room to read it, because a lot of people never read it. And so you have to take an active part in your own community government. You have to.
So I do appreciate it. Unless anyone else on the table has a comment, I'd like to move on. I appreciate you guys coming out. I didn't mean to take that much time. So if you guys want to see, we don't mind if you guys run away, but
It won't take, it'll be days, not weeks now.
yeah, we're not looking at weeks now. And like I said, I never said we're going next year. The goal is this year. So thank you very much.
Before you close the discussion, there's a gentleman here with the glasses around his neck. He had his hand up a couple of times.
Yeah, I'm sorry. They both have glasses around their neck, unfortunately, Marty.
beige shirt.
So both guys with glasses around their necks, I'm sorry.
I just have one question. Did the comments from DEC affect the access? Because that's
Again,
sort of the critical issue.
I looked at it, I don't think so. I think some of their comments actually were designed to make consistent certain provisions that weren't consistent. So they actually pointed out a couple other things that helped resolve some ambiguity. So I think,
Their comments were more on language than on substantial
Is that
changes.
a critical issue?
right.
Yes. And I'm sorry, you have one more?
Yeah, we do appreciate the time you've spent on it, and I know that there was a lot of reaction around the country with Irene and Sandy, which were abnormal. I mean, the entire eastern seaboard flooded, Port Jervis, trains washed out, everything. So that really shouldn't be into play with this. I think everybody here just wants to have the same rights that everybody else has. You know, it did disturb me when I found out that even though the flood never came in my house, came up on my lawn, everything was fine, if a tree had fallen on my house and it sustained more than 50% damage, they'd say, oh, well, you can't rebuild. And I thought,
had a fire the same.
or if I had a fire, I had Central Hudson have a power surge one time. Had that burn my house. And then they'd say, well, you can't read it, walk away from your property. You know, you wonder what else, other agenda from somewhere, I'm not saying from you, came in that say, oh good, let's make this open property. You know, so that's all. We just want to be the same as everybody else. We don't want any extra. We're just fair.
You made a specific example of what I was saying when I had objections to what's in here now with the constraint of only being able to go to 50%. I'd want to rebuild my house as it was.
Right. I'm not saying I want to put, you know, make it into a McMansion. I just want to rebuild. If something happened to it, I want to be back in my home. That's
To be able to sell the home if you feel like you might
Yeah,
do something.
so, when you get old and weak.
Don't want to climb up the ladder anymore to clear out the gutters.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
everyone. We appreciate it. I think I saw Richard walk in and some others, and if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to just go to the library then. Thank you again, guys. Thank you. Caroline, thank you.
Richard, do you have thoughts on the floodplain law?
Excuse me?
Do you have thoughts on the floodplain law?
My parents' home was out there.
And Richard, if you want to come and sit there and use that mic, in case there's questions, please feel free. Just give them 30 seconds here. Or 45.
What's our? Yeah, you need a signature.
Go ahead, start with that. Go ahead.
All right. Terrible road then.
Can I do it? Try it. Okay, if everyone's good, if anyone had any other conversations, if you could just take them out in the hallway, we'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we just wanted to, the library has put onto, has submitted to the town of New Paltz, to change the annual contribution of the town of New Paltz for the budget of Elton Memorial Library, a free association library, be increased by $70,000 annually to $466,000 annually. And this is under pursuant of New York State election law, paragraph 4108. This has been submitted and it was received by our town clerk on September 4th, 2015. And there were questions from this board on how it works, the way it is set up is correct, and also on the library budget. So we have Richard here, who I believe has some information for us. So I'll start with you, Richard, if you don't mind.
No, not at all, not at all.
Good.
Well, I thank you for inviting me here tonight. We do have several other board members who are here and a couple of former board members as well. Yes. Oh. Sorry about that, Charlene. I want to thank you for inviting me here tonight. I think the main reason I'm here is to ask that the town board, as stipulated under law, pass the petitions on to the Board of Elections so the public referendum process can continue. The library is, as has been pointed out, is a free association library. The library has existed since 1909 when it was provisionally chartered by the New York State Board of Regents as the New Paltz Free Library. In 1920, it was renamed as the Elton Memorial Library, but with the same purpose, which is to serve as a free library for New Paltz. An association library, I think there's a misunderstanding about what exactly an association library is. There are 4 different forms that a public library can take in the state of New York. Association library is one of them. The other one that in theory is possible for us, or is an option for us in New Paltz, is a special district library. However, special district library is not really practically an option for us now. Governor Cuomo, for example, has twice vetoed the legislation which would have made the town of Rhinebeck Library a special district library. So that is not an option for us. Association library is what we are. We're one of 6 association libraries in Ulster County, and one of many in the Mid-Hudson Library System, which includes 66 libraries. As an association library, Elgin is in good company. Our state's largest library, the New York Public Library, is also an association library and is operated functionally in the same way that we are, albeit they are much, much larger. The primary and recommended method of funding for association libraries is via public referendum, which is commonly or familiarly referred to as a 414. That is the number of the state statute, which outlines how the referendum process works. All association libraries in New York are required to be administered and incorporated as not-for-profit organizations, as 501c3 organizations, approved by the Internal Revenue Service, and Elgin Library is a 501c3. As an association library, the meetings of our board are open to the public. The board meets each month on the 4th Thursday at 7 p.m. Those meetings are published on the calendar on our website, and any deviations from the schedule must be announced 30 days in advance as they are. The membership of the Elgin Memorial Library consists of any and all residents of voting age in the town of New Paltz, as stipulated by our bylaws. An increase in the maximum size of the Board of Trustees was recently approved by the New York State Regents. The board can now have up to 15 members. We currently have 12. Members can serve 3-year terms, and our bylaws do provide for term limits. Our board is self-nominating, meaning the board has a nominating committee which seeks out new potential members. Board members must be residents of voting age of the town of New Paltz. Board members are elected by the membership at the organization's annual meeting in January. The budget is also approved by the membership present at that annual meeting. In terms of accountability and reporting, as with all 501c3 not-for-profit organizations, the Elgin Library has multiple forms of accountability and responsibilities for reporting. First, as is typical of nonprofit organizations, Elgin must file a Form 990 annually with the Internal Revenue Service, something we've done consistently, and our reports are up to date. Form 990s are prepared by an independent accounting firm. In the most recent years, we have used Kimball & O'Brien in Kingston, which is a firm with a particular experience in libraries or working with libraries. Kimball & O'Brien also reviews our financial records on an annual basis and issues financial statements. In addition to this, Elgin is responsible, as are all public libraries in New York State, for filing annually with the New York State Education Department, the state agency which oversees the library's charter. Annual filings include information on finances, staffing, circulation, and usage. Any of these reports are available by request from the library. In addition, Form 990s can be found on GuideStar or by simply typing in a Google search, Elgin Library 990. Elgin Library is a member of the Mid-Hudson Library System, as I said. It's a system composed of 66 public libraries in Ulster, Dutchess, Putnam, Greene, and Columbia counties. MHLS provides coordinated or shared services, offers technical assistance, advocates on the state level for local libraries, and collects information about member libraries. Finally, information about our current budget is available on the library's website. which is eltinglibrary.org, by clicking on About Elting and then clicking on Library Financials. Our funding is compared to other local libraries. In terms of per capita funding, Elting ranks 15th out of 20 among similarly sized communities in Ulster and Dutchess counties. Out of the same 20 local libraries, we are tied for 4th place in terms of the number of hours per week that the library is open to the public. So while our funding ranks among the lowest, the number of hours that we're open rank among the highest. In addition, we are open 7 days a week, while many local libraries are not. Elting's level of taxpayer funding has been historically low when compared to other local libraries. This has over time diminished our savings below the recommended equivalent of 6 months of operating expenses. And to just give some historic background, when we first started on the first 414 referendum, this will be the third, our taxpayer funding was very close to the lowest per capita. We were receiving about, I believe it was $162,000 a year, which made up a fraction of our budget at the time. So we've had a lot of ground to make up to become more on par with other local libraries. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. When you look at the education laws.
I'm sorry, Mr. Barry, I can't hear you.
Okay. When you look at the education law, the particular section that deals with association libraries talks about registered free association libraries are eligible to seek a referendum vote for public funding. But it also refers to the fact that the registration requirement has certain caveats, including sharing with the municipality that's providing the funding your annual budget, including ensuring that your trustees are publicly elected by your membership. When I looked at your website, it looks like in order to be a member, you have to make an annual contribution.
That is not correct.
That's what it says.
Okay, that may be, and we can certainly look at that. Our bylaws stipulate that any resident of the town of New Paltz who is of voting age is a member of the association.
The way I read it was that any member that's of voting age or anybody that lives in the area is entitled to a free library card. But in order to gain membership, you have to pay an annual fee. And then, hold on.
No, I will correct you.
What?
It's not anyone who lives in the area. It's anyone who is a resident of the town of New Paltz.
Let's pull up your website. So my question to you is, if the registration requirement of the state ed law says that your library should be sharing your financial data with the municipality on an annual basis, we haven't had any of that.
Well, that has never been requested, but all of that, as I've already stated, is publicly available.
But see, we're in a situation where we're responsible for public funds. So anytime you have public funds being expended, there's a need to have transparency so that the public can look at the books and understand why and where the money's being spent, and understand why you need an increase of funding of $70,000. So without that information...
But Kevin, your question, the way you're phrasing it, presumes that information is not available. I've already said it is available.
But
I've articulated the ways in which it is
the
available.
regulation itself says that each year you should be providing that to the municipality. A detailed budget, detailed.
I will assure you that our 990s are very detailed. They're an standard IRS form that is extremely detailed.
They are 2 years behind. I mean, 2013 is the last year you'd be able to get them a 990 though. So they're
Right,
2 years.
2014 was, I think, is or was just filed.
So the 990, and Larry, I'm not just picking on you, it's just any 990s on any non-for-profit. So the latest 990 I could retrieve for any non-for-profit, and actually it isn't even required, but the nearest one I could get from you would be 2013. It would be 2 years in errors.
Right.
I wasn't able to pull up, and with several of us try, and maybe we just weren't doing it right, we were unable to pull up your budget on the website. It
Well,
could have been an error. It also didn't have you listed as president. You had someone that was president several years ago. The treasurer was listed. I contacted that treasurer, and they haven't been treasurer for, I believe, about also 2 years. So there might be some updating that's needed.
There might be some updating, I would have to check on that.
Right.
But I did check today, Jeff, the financials, our current budget is on the website.
Maybe we just couldn't find it. We had a couple of us
Well,
try. And that's fine.
It's not
I
hidden,
think there
it's
are
under
two
About
websites
Elking.
for the library.
Right.
One was registered a long time ago, and then there's a current
See-
website.
Right, and I do.
Maybe we
understand-
were on the wrong one. It's possible. I don't.
I do understand what
Yeah.
you're saying, Kevin, but we are compliant with the
Well,
ways that we have to report.
I know you're compliant, but let me just read this, okay?
Well, that was
This
alleged
says,
not
this
to be the
says,
case.
well, let me have you understand why it's not the case. You're required as a registered free library to comply with section 90.2, standards for registration of public free association and Indian libraries. It says a public free association or Indian library will be registered if it meets the following standards satisfactory to the commissioner. It's got to be governed by written bylaws which outline the responsibilities and procedures of the library board of trustees is number one, has a board-approved written long-term plan of service, that's number two, presents an annual report to the community on the library's progress in meeting its goals and objectives, four, has board-approved written policies for the operation of the library, five, presents annually to the appropriate funding agencies a written budget which will enable the library to meet or exceed these standards and to carry out its long-range plan of service. Periodically evaluates the effectiveness of the library's collection and services in meeting community needs, and goes on. And I'm just saying that you can't just come to the town board and say, we need $70,000
But we're not coming to
more.
the town board to ask for that.
But
That's
you're
why
coming to the
this
community and asking for the money.
The
But-
414 referendum exists specifically so that library funding is not politicized. And it exists in a way that I understand as a town board member might be frustrating in some ways, but it exists so that the public can vote directly on library funding.
You're asking us to give the public a choice, is essentially what we're talking
No, I'm not asking you that. The public already has, we've already done
about.
that.
I'm saying you're asking us to accept your petition.
Right.
And I think that's maybe where we're, we'll
Right.
build miscommunication here. Can I just ask you a question too, just about
Sure.
the funds in general? Obviously, libraries have changed drastically in the last decade or so. And I'm not setting you up for anything, I'm genuinely curious and asking. When I see the changes in 2014 and then again in 2016, you're looking at roughly between the two 20%. Is that change, is that based on other things that you are funding at the library or the need for additional funding from the municipality to continue what you're currently doing?
It's primarily to continue what we're doing. What we are dealing with is we have a much larger building, which it's reality. The building is heavily used. That requires continual maintenance. We've made changes in how we operate the building to more appropriately protect the community's investment in the building. And we realize as a board, because we are the ones who are fiduciarily responsible, if something goes wrong with the finances, each of us as board members, not town board members, but as board members of the library are responsible. We realize that we have to make sure the level of funding is such that the library can sustain its operations and have enough reserve to deal with things like when our sewer line breaks, and that has to be repaired. There's just simply no choice.
Now, you had mentioned too the idea about falling below the threshold of having 6 months of operation left. Are you subject to like a fiscal stress test from the state comptroller's office?
We could be, it's a little bit gray for association libraries.
Yeah, I can
because in some ways, and I'm very familiar because for most of my career, I've run and worked for not-for-profit organizations. In some ways, we run like a typical not-for-profit organization, like Family or Unison in our community. But in other ways, we don't. We have a dual responsibility to report to the IRS and to the State Education Department. Most not-for-profits don't have that responsibility to report to the State Education Department. Now, with some of the newer legislation, we do have to complete forms with the Comptroller's Office every year and answer a series of questions about our funding. But it's really more focused on the overall tax situation for the state.
So there, and I don't know, maybe it's just not done for libraries, I'm thinking about municipalities and counties. So you're not aware if there is a fiscal stress test score? I mean, because based on
No.
what you just said, I think that it would.
No, I understand what you're saying, not in the
Yeah.
same way that a municipality is
Sure.
rated in that way,
Okay.
there is not.
Okay.
And I think there's some of the things that have changed though, Richard, and again, if we had the budget, it would help. Like one is just doing math based off of what reports I could find. New Paltz would now move up to, it looks like, second or third place in funding in the dollars per capita. It looks like okay. It looks like 3632. I have Woodstock at 6819. I have Marlboro Milton at 6770. And then I have Plattekill at 3608. And on our per capita, it looks like New Paltz will be at 3632.
You have Gardner or Rosendale and your communities.
I have Rosendale at 2837, and this is a document produced by you guys. I don't have, and I tried to update it, it does not have Gardner listed. I know they operate a little bit differently. They operate through education law, and Gardner operates under, the reason why we all pay it on our taxes is they do their funding differently. They do their funding over through the school district, the consolidated school district, which we don't. Our funding is simply on this community. And then the percentage of public funding, it looks like your operating expenses, 540,000, 540,000, and then if we're going to be, the community is going to be asked to give 466,000, that would put us at 85, 86%, and then that would also that would move us from being in last place, that would move us up into the top 4 or 5, it looks like. Plattekill, I apologize. Highland might be a little bit anomaly, because I know they just had a big one, but they're building a whole new structure in Highland.
Well, but that bond issue is.
But I'm just simply saying is that I think if we try to compare some of the same numbers, it looks like we have moved. So I'm not trying to either pick on your numbers or defend them, but you were saying we're at the bottom of it, but I don't, from the numbers I was able to find, it doesn't look like we are at the bottom any longer. And the per capita expense, we are not at the bottom. It looks like we are pretty much near the top now.
What I said, Jeff, was we are 15 out of 20 of libraries in similarly sized communities. It's very difficult to take a library like Craigsmore, which has very limited hours, is serving a very small community, and compare that to a library like New Paltz, where we have, exponentially number.
Right, and I think you guys use these on purpose, which I don't blame you. It's simple. This is Woodstock, Marlboro, and Milton, Plattekill, Stone Ridge, Highland, Rosendale, Soapis, Town of Ulster, Saugerties, and New Paltz. So using that list, under that list, you had us at 2502, and that put us in bottom third about, and now the top third.
I think that's all. Chris Watkins, I've been a board member since 2010. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to address you. First, just on the website, I just pulled up on my iPhone our actual website. I think that might be at the heart of some of the misunderstanding. It's eltinglibrary.org, and the current board of trustees are listed. Richard is.
So it's very possible we were on.
It sounds as though you're on a defunct website, so that might.
I was wondering, because a couple of us tried.
This is what you have, though, for your budget on your website.
Are you on
which is-
eltinglibrary.org?
Yeah, that's the PDF.
See, that's,
Okay. So I'm sorry, Chris, several of us were attempting, I guess we were on the, probably an older website, I didn't read right, so
Likely that there
our
was
mistake.
one that might have been through the, might have been.
You
I
might
don't
have
know.
been on the library system website, which we don't maintain.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, so we.
We do
Make
have
sure.
the most current data, which Richard was addressing with respect to per capita tax spending among communities within Dutchess and Ulster counties, from 5 to 25,000 population, which is a broad range, but that's where we fit in. And according to our calculations, which is based on the Mid-Hudson Library Service website and the data that's publicly available, we are currently 15th out of 20 our per capita spending currently is at 28-27. So that's why I think when you said 25, that's old data.
Well, no, actually, it might be old, but I'm kind of with, just, and I apologize, Chris.
It's okay.
If I take, what are you using, the population number that, even though I go off of it a little bit, the population number 12,830, what,
Yeah.
you have a different pot, 12.
I don't have the population, I just have the
Yeah.
chart listing the per capita spending. I don't have.
I was just doing simple math, I was just taking
Yeah.
466, I was taking 466,000 and divided it by 12,830, and that's
Okay.
pretty, I mean, even,
Population?
Right.
Yeah.
but
In
you're-
2010 census, it was 14,000.
Right, I was just
so
gonna say, you've
So-
got an old number there by a factor of like 10%.
And I think that would apply to the libraries that you're comparing us to. By our calculations, putting aside what other libraries will increase, and most libraries do increase on an annual basis, whether they're a special district library, whether they're a school district library,
Yep.
whether they're a free association library or a municipal library. Most libraries increase year to year. This
Yep.
is only the third time in 7 years that we've asked for an increase in tax. But if you
But, and
look
I'm sorry,
at,
but that does still
Jeff,
give you.
just look at the numbers.
It still gives you 30, not 26, $28, it still gives you 32,
No,
36.
currently,
Yeah.
at 396,000.
Okay, no, I'm just talking about the increase.
Right.
Yeah.
Currently, we're 2827, Jeff, according to our calculations.
Yep, that's what I got.
Okay. And you may be right in terms of what the increase would be, but
Yeah.
recognizing that other libraries will also increase. But even without those increases, in the 20 libraries where we're currently 15th that are of comparable size in these two counties, we would still be in the middle, 10 or 11, not at the top, not second. And that's without any increase, because we don't know what their increases will be. So I do think, it's important to have the correct information for the public that ultimately is going to be voting on whether or not this library should have increased funding. And quite frankly, we need it.
But you have to show the public, we have a very detailed budget every year, and we have to go through it. We have to
We
vet
have a
it.
very detailed budget too, Mr.
But it's a very public process, because we're using public funds.
We have a public meeting, an annual
I'm
association
just-
meeting at every year in which the budget is discussed and in which the budget is voted upon.
Right.
And anybody who's of voting age or anybody else who wants to attend is welcome to attend.
So, one thing I'd like to bring up here is, what we're asked tonight is to accept the petitions.
That's it.
Beyond the actual funding here, I mean, technically, if you guys had asked for $1 million, doesn't really matter the number, we're asked about the petitions. I do think that there definitely, maybe could be a little bit of a better dialogue between the town and the library, so we don't, right, whilst we're accepting the petitions, asking these type of questions, which are great questions, but I wish we had that conversation earlier.
And we're always open
Oh, yeah, no,
to
no.
anybody attending
Yeah,
any of
I'm
our
not,
meetings.
that's
Absolutely.
not on you. I think that maybe going forward, what we would like to do with a new board is appoint a liaison to the library, because, so we can have these conversations earlier on. What I will say though about the petitions is Marty and I went through them, and when I went through them, I looked at it from the standpoint of eligible voters opposed to what you would look at for a partisan petition if someone were running for a public office. And this is important to note. There were individuals on this that were not in the district or weren't registered or duplicates, but those were noted in the petitions, crossed out, and not included in the
I
final
mean,
total.
there was an allegation in today's paper, or I think kind of misleading language about the process. This is the third time we've done this. We're in communication with the Board of Elections about exactly what they need from us and how to do it.
Yep.
We would get a list of registered voters, and Allison and I went through that list person by
And that's
person.
what I'm trying to get to, just to let you know, just because I did go through this, these were done very well. Where there were mistakes, they were noted, and they were not included in the final total,
That's
and you
correct.
have more than enough to be considered for a referendum today. So just trying to bring this conversation around, I do think that going forward, we should have a better communication with the library. But based on the petitions that were submitted, I do think that this is certainly more than enough to have a referendum on this.
And Dan, I thank you for going through those, and Chris, thank you very much. And, you know, and I think what this is, you know, going back and looking, this is, I was not on the board, but in 2004, this was the same conversation that was had then, coming from money, and I will use Kitty Brown as she was discussing this with the library, which is, we have many other expenses in this community, and now what they didn't quite have in 2004, we now have is a tax cap. Now this is outside of the tax cap, but we are very sensitive to what our residents are being asked to pay. Everything has to come from some place. So Dan ran away, but to Dan's point, it seems in 2004, the same conversation, and I do remember Kitty saying that, and again, I wasn't on the board, but I do remember her saying, you know, we have recreation, we have a teen scene, we have other expenses in this community, that we have a senior program. These are all programs that make it great to live here. So I believe what the conversation was with the board was, and Dan, I appreciate you going through all the petitions, because that's never easy. But I think the conversation is what is the presentation going to be to the community to see what is the need for this? You know, 2004, the need was for a new structure. When you came back here 2 years ago, and again, I apologize, I have not seen the paper yet. We were told, and I'm attributing it to you, and if it was not you, we were told, and this was the memory of several of us here, that you wouldn't be back for 5 or 7 years.
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because we went back and looked at the tape from the meeting we were at 2 years ago. I didn't say that, and neither did anyone else from the library. So that was incorrect, and it really would be great if someone could correct that in the paper next week. Because it's not, that was an allegation that was thrown out there without checking with me, without checking with anyone in the library, and it was very easy to check.
Well, actually, I do specifically recall somebody saying that.
Well, look at the tape yourself.
Okay,
It's
I will.
not on there.
But here's my problem. My problem is that we as a town have to look at each line item in our budget and figure out ways to be more efficient. Now, you have the de Havilland collection over there, right?
The Havilland Highbury Historic.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
You have a collection there that it's in a room that's got to be temperature controlled, and I'm sure that's not cheap to operate, right?
Right, conservatively, it costs about 10% of our budget to
Okay.
operate that way.
But there are other locations in our community that have the same kinds of rooms. Why aren't people getting together and putting these all in one room? I mean, you can save a lot of money. You're talking about
That
saving.
is a larger question, well outside the scope of this. It's a conversation I would be happy to have, Kevin.
But everybody that gets public funds has to spend those funds in the most efficient way.
Right. Well, differently, okay.
And I'm going back.
Let me answer that first,
Okay, but before you do, I just want to read association membership from your website, all right?
Okay.
It says,
I wanna-
any New
first,
Paltz
Kevin,
resident.
you put one question out there that
But
relates
I
to
just
the
popped up. I
circulation.
just want to read it to you.
Okay, but I'm going to answer
Any
this one
New
first.
Paltz resident eligible to vote in a general election, excluding school election, and has a valid library card, who makes an annual monetary contribution to the library is a member of the Library Association. Any association member whose annual contribution is made by December 31st may run for office or vote at the annual meeting in January.
Kevin, I will have to check our website. There's already been things said that were on our website that we looked at.
Is that your website?
We need to update it then, Kevin, that's all.
No, that's not. I don't think that is our website.
Here, it is your website, look.
It just needs to be updated, Kevin, that's all.
Again,
That's in the
though, I
bylaw.
think that the question for today is about accepting petitions. And I think that all these questions are great, but those questions are for the voters to decide at this point, assuming we accept the petitions. I do think that we should have these conversations. I think that that's something we should look at going forward. But all I can say is I'm comfortable accepting the petitions tonight.
I'm not comfortable because I don't think the library is properly constituted. I really don't. And if you think about it, the law was amended to give association libraries the access to public funds because they need the public funds. but there's no check and balance on it.
There absolutely is. and I
Not
went
with the
over-
municipality, there's not. And the requirements are specific that you should be sharing your annual budget with the municipality every year so that we can look at it.
But this was specifically set up so questions about funding can go directly to the voters.
How are the voters supposed to make a decision if they're not able to look at your financials?
I just went over several ways where people could look up what our finances are, including asking for it at the
Well,
library.
we're required to put our budgets right online, the whole budget.
Richard, did you say that the budget was online?
There is, if you go
And
to
it's
our,
eltinglibrary.org?
Eltinglibrary.org is the website.
I'll show you the
Can you direct me
financials.
where to get to the budget on it?
click
On
on,
my phone.
Right here.
you click on
here.
About Elton,
You got
and
it.
then library.
Here's the
financials.
budget.
Okay. How detailed is it?
It's a couple circles. That's it, pie charts.
All of our information is publicly available, not to start casting aspersions, but nobody's ever raised these issues with us. Nobody's actually even come to any of our board members from your board. You're always welcome to. We're totally transparent, not hiding anything. We were audited by Kimball and O'Brien 2 years ago in a thorough financial audit. All of our budgets are much less than the town budget, but as detailed. And all of that information is absolutely available, Mr. Berry. All you have to do is ask for it, we provide.
I'm just saying, I shouldn't have to ask for it, and that's number one. Number two, when you look at where you're going with your numbers, you're almost at 7% of our total town tax levy. You're at 6.7% of the tax levy. And you weren't anywhere near that a while ago. And I'm looking at your 990s that Jeff pulled. There's no incentive for you to go out and get fundraise.
There absolutely
Well,
is.
it's interesting you mention that, because this weekend is our largest fundraiser, which is entirely volunteer run. Our library does more to raise funds than most other communities do. If we were a special district library, 100% of our operating funds would have to come from the taxpayers.
I'm sorry I
But
feel
again, to
this
get
way.
back to Dan's question, or Dan's point, that my understanding is our function, or your function tonight, is to accept the petition as presented and move them along to the Board of Elections. I'm happy to have these conversations. I'm happy to talk to you further about the historic collection, share with you some of the history about how that developed and why that is at the library, perhaps talk about what alternatives are, but they are outside of the context of this specific issue.
That's why I'm not going to vote for it, because it's outside. It should be inside. And there's a very specific registration requirement under educational law.
You're
and
actually looking at
you
a
don't
chart that's
listen.
out of date.
I went to the section itself.
I understand
You're
it's out of date.
you're not completely compliant with the registration requirements. You're not.
So I think,
Kevin says that that's on there, and between us, I'd like to leave with the information too. I'm hearing that there are maybe a couple of concerns. One directs transparency or perception that maybe it isn't as transparent as it might be. If it's on the website, then it's transparent, no issue. And you just gave me the clicks to take to find it, and I will.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. That takes an issue away. And as has been said by Dan, I don't think it's our role here tonight to pass judgment as to whether a 30-some-odd% increase over this period of time is appropriate. That's for the voters to do. And it's as I see it, it's our role to pass judgment on your petition. And I sat with Dan last night outside on the table on a nice fall evening, and we went through it, and we both got comfortable. A couple from Gardner maybe got missed, but other than that, it wouldn't really affect the total number. So if we get to a vote tonight, I would vote affirmatively.
Thank you.
And I think this is a tremendous example on the issues with local government, and it's not the libraries thing. It's kind of amazing that you guys can go for an increase of this amount, and we can have this kind of conversation. and the state or the county or the federal government will do 3 or 4 times the amount without a public referendum, and we don't always have this large of a conversation about it. But I appreciate you speaking with us tonight about it and clarifying some of these points. I do think going forward, it would be nice if we had some better communication, and maybe we can assign you a board member, and since I've noted it twice, I feel like I'm going to end up with that job, which is also okay. But thank you for your work, and yeah, I think it'll be great to let the voters decide what they want to do with this.
Yeah, and I think, Richard, the same thing I said several years ago, 2 years ago, when we talked about this is something going in front of the budget. And to what Kevin was discussing, I mean, you're going to be looking at our budget. Our budget increase is in basis points. We went up. So you had mentioned, Chris, about the town budget. You're just a fraction of the town budget. I agree. But whether your budget is $100 or it's $11 million, it's still a budget. You know, you're increasing your budget 15, 6, almost 17%. We're increasing ours 0.68% over 2 years, so I'll split it in half. So over 2 years, we've increased our budget less than 1.5%. And, you know, I hear what you're saying. So our job here is exactly as what I had said a couple of years ago, Richard, when, you know, you guys came here 2 years ago, which is our job is to accept the petition, which was legally accepted by our clerk. Dan and Marty volunteered to go through the petition and show that it was valid. It was a valid number of signatures. So unless anyone has any other questions, I would like to make a resolution for the town board to accept and move this on to, it's a resolution that then goes on to, we need to do 2 of them. One is we need to do a neg deck, and then we need to do a resolution. So unless anyone had any other questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Sure.
My name is Jackie Schwartzberg, and just as a lot of people have been giving background, I think tangibly when we talk about what the library contributes to the community, and this is particularly for you, Mr. Barrett, we have over 100, I'm a volunteer, we have over 125,000 visits each year to this library. That doesn't mean there are 125,000 people. That means a lot of people in town are using the library, and it's very important to them. And as the use increases, of course, the cost increases.
You know, and this is also a great example of what's happened in a post-tax cap government world, is that we, and it's not we, I shouldn't say we, that local governments end up looking at numbers opposed to services. And that's very unfortunate, and I think that that's quite an interesting thing that we're witnessing tonight as a result of that. Okay.
And again, because, you know, knowing the history and being part of the history is important anytime in making decisions in government. And as many of you know, my mother was a librarian her whole life, so I have nothing against libraries nor what they do. Hanging to this day in my daughter's room, who has since now graduated, SUNY New Paltz, is the gold shovel from Breaking the Ground in 2000, and I believe that was 5. I think it was 2005. So my family has a great intimacy. I grew up working down at the book fair for many, many years. My family was very heavily involved. So none of this up here is meant to say that we do not value the library, what it does, what its function is in our community. What everyone on this board is simply looking at is what does the community know about this budget? And it's a very substantial part of the budget and the expenses. You know, we're looking at probably, at that rate, you're probably getting pretty close to, on a $300,000 home, I'm gonna bet you're getting pretty close to 90, 100 bucks per a $300,000 home is about our average home here in the community, and you're probably looking at about $100. That's a lot of money.
People need to see your budget. Can you send me a copy?
It's on the website.
It's not on the website.
Marty,
We can provide,
Well, I didn't find that.
No, the detail, like
It's a pie chart. It's a
Like-
pie. I want a detailed line-by-line budget. I'd like to see
I'm
it.
happy to
Please come
do
to any
that.
of our meetings.
Yeah.
No, just send me one. Just send me. I'm a member of the public.
Please,
It's on
you're a member
file.
of the library.
Send me one. Send me one.
You're welcome.
do you have a card?
So you're not going to send me one?
Kevin, I'd
It's not my call whether he's.
hold on, I'm up here. I would be happy to send you one. It's not a secret at all, so certainly
you.
I can do that. I do need your email address. to
Okay,
do that.
I'll give you that.
Well, that would be good, Richard, because then there's more transparency. And perhaps we can make it available on the town's website as well. And we're all chasing the same thing, quality of life here in New Paltz.
Right, good point.
Suggest one question. My name is Irene Eckenberger, and I am a board member of the library. And it sounds like that we can improve our communication. We make the assumption that because we make all of our information available to all the public in this town, you are part of that public. Then we do make that information available. If you in future would like us to make it specifically available to you, absolutely we can do that.
Probably, Irene.
You know, redundancy is often a good thing, and it sounds tonight like it's a very good thing.
It's just how easy or hard it is to access it. You know, do you have to drive there versus nowadays where we have the internet and things.
And I
It's so
must
easy.
say, there are glitches, not on our library site, but on Google. When I first moved here a few years ago from Baltimore, and then came after the library, I would Google and I would find old, not old, but former board members in these different sites. And it took me a while to navigate the official site of the library and discount the other ones. But it sounds like you absolutely are in a position of
And I'm with you, and I apologize.
strengthening our communication.
We should have done, we had a couple of us trying, and Chris, to your point, we were definitely on the wrong site, and we did the same thing, we just Googled it and came up with Elton Memorial Library, and we chased around, so you have one that's got Richard listed, we were definitely on an older site, and that is also a problem of the internet age. So the first resolution I'd like to do, unless there's any more questions from the board, this would be for the negative declaration on the Elton Memorial Library ballot proposition for 2015. At a regular meeting of the town board of the town of New Paltz, Ulster County, New York, held at Town Hall, Veterans Drive, New Paltz, New York, on the 24th day of September 2015 at 9 o'clock prevailing time. The meeting was called to order by Deputy Supervisor Logan. And upon roll being called, the following roll was taken. Supervisor Zimmet absent, Logan present, Irwin present, Barry present, Mr. Torres present. The following resolution was offered by Deputy Supervisor Logan, and it was seconded by
I'll second it.
Councilmember Daniel Torres. Whereas there has been filed in the office of the town clerk, town of New Paltz, on September 4th, 2015, a petition pursuant to section 259, subdivision 1B, subsection 1 of the education law of the state of New York by the Board of Trustees of the Elton Memorial Library, requesting that the following question be placed upon the ballot and voted on at the next general election of the town of New Paltz to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2015. Whereas the town board of the town of New Paltz has compared the proposed action as described in the environmental assessment form, parts 1 and 2, with the list of criteria set forth in 6 NYCRR 617.12, and determined that the application proposed is a type 2 action, and as such, the town board has no further responsibilities to under this act. So Supervisor, this is a roll call vote. Supervisor Zimmet is...
Need a second for the...
Is absent. No, you seconded it already. Seconded by Daniel. Deputy Supervisor Logan is an aye. Councilmember Marty Irwin.
Aye.
Councilmember Kevin Berry.
This is on the neg deck?
Yes, it is.
Aye.
And Councilmember Daniel Torres.
Aye.
Okay, the resolution was thereupon duly adopted. You can give that to clerk. And then now this is, I'm not sure what the right one is. This is, just want to make sure I have the correct one. This is it, right? Yeah. Okay, resolution, Elton Memorial Library 2015, at a regularly scheduled meeting of the town board of the town of New Paltz, Ulster County, New York, held at Town Hall in New Paltz, New York, in said town on the 24th of September 2015, 9 o'clock p.m. prevailing time. The meeting was called to order by Deputy Supervisor Logan. And upon roll being called, the following roll was taken. Supervisor Zimmet absent, Councilmember Logan present. Marty Irwin, present. Barry, present. Daniel Torres, present. The following resolution was offered by Jeffrey Logan, Deputy Supervisor, who moved its adoption and seconded by,
I'll second it.
and that's by Daniel Torres. Thank you, Dan. To wit, whereas there has been filed in the office of the Town Clerk, Town of New Paltz, on September 4th, 2015, a petition pursuant to Section 259, Subdivision 1B, Subsection 1 of the Education Law of the State of New York by the Board of Trustees of the Elton Memorial Library, requesting that the following question be placed upon the ballot and voted on the next general election, Town of New Paltz, to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2015. Shall the annual contribution of the Town of New Paltz provided in its budget for the operating budget of the Elton Memorial Library, a free association library located in New Paltz, New York, be increased by $70,000 annually to the sum of $466,000 annually. Now, therefore, be it resolved pursuant to Section 81 of the Town Law of the State of New York that the following question shall be voted on at the next general election of the Town of New Paltz to be held on November 3rd, 2015. Shall the annual contribution of the Town of New Paltz provide in its budget for the operating budget of the Elton Memorial Library, a free association library located in New Paltz, New York, be increased by $70,000 annually to the sum of $466,000 annually. The question of the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly put on a vote on roll call, which results as follows. I would just make one comment on this so all are aware. This is, and Marty, this is your first time doing budgets. This is outside of the tax cap. There are separate legal parts to this, so this does not include in our tax cap, so you're aware of that. Supervisors in
Discussion?
actually, we are actually doing the resolution, so if you have a discussion on this, I can do it during the vote, you can make a discussion. You can make a comment
I
during the
would
vote.
appreciate it if I could make it so the other board members
Sure.
could consider it.
Go ahead, sure.
The word annually appears at least in 4 places, 2 different sentences, twice each, where it talks about raised annually $70,000 to a total of $466,000 annually. The first annually in each of those 2 sentences makes me wonder if a reader might interpret it as every year there is a $70,000 increase, and could the word annually be deleted in those 2 locations?
This is actually directly from our attorney, and the reason why it's being increased $70,000 annually to a sum of $466 annually. So you were asking for a one-time increase annually under this resolution for a total of $466,000. If they wanted to go beyond the $466,000 or go below it, should they so choose. This is all from, yes, this is from our attorney. Then they would have to then do another petition. So for example, and I apologize, Richard.
Under those circumstances, fine, thank you.
And maybe Richard could recall real briefly if he wants to, the last one was from
321,
There you go.
396.
There you go. So, and that had the same exact language, it's 321, it had the same difference, and that's why under the state law, under section 81 of the law, they have to state the amount of the increase, and then the state that we will be putting in it. So then next year's budget, unless they come to us again for another increase, or for that matter, a decrease, it would remain 466 until it is changed
I
again.
agree with this second annually should be deleted. It should be.
It's ambiguous.
So,
Only reason being though, Kevin, is this is the same wording that we had in the last one that we used. I'm not disagreeing with your legal knowledge on this. This is the same exact one that we got from our last time we did it, and the way it was explained to us last time was it is the end number to the sum of 466.
Right, but it's
Is
a
it-
one-time increase, it's not an annual increase.
Right.
It gives you the number.
So could we insert the word a one-time annual increase of 70?
Well, we can just delete, I am comfortable with deleting the word annually after 70,000, so it is to the sum of 466,000 annually.
just to check, is the phrasing being changed, the phrasing on the resolution, or is it
That's
also,
what I was just
or is it
looking at.
also the phrasing on what the referendum item
Well,
would be? Because that would
we
be
read
a
it
problem.
twice.
I am reading it directly from the referendum.
So,
It better be cleared up.
which I can check right now. There, let's see, the referendum reads, shall the annual contribution of the town of New Paltz provide in its budget for the Elton Memorial Library, a free association library located in New Paltz, New York, be increased by $70,000 annually to $466,000 annually. And that is directly from the resolution from the Board of Trustees, and
So
I will more than guess more than enough attorneys looked at that.
Yeah, but we cannot, what I'm saying
Right.
is if
We
people
cannot do
signed a
more
petition
annually, yeah.
to do that, you cannot change that phrase.
And I certainly have faith that the library has more than enough attorneys kicking around that,
And Joe reviewed.
Well, and
Joe reviewed it.
this is, we didn't make up that language. That is, vetted and suggested language, and it's the same language we used in the last two.
it is, I remember that language being used, and it is the exact language that we'll see on the ballot, and I'm sure there are more than, like I said, there's more than enough legal minds on the library board that would have quoted it if it was felt it was in error.
Well, I hope that nobody else reads it that way that I was conjecturing, because there would be lost votes if it was interpreted that way.
You know, in fact,
We
yeah,
have discussed that, actually, not this year, because we'd already visited this issue the last two times. That's the language that we are strongly suggested to use, and it's consistent with other similar 414 provisions.
so again, it matches to Dan's point is that, and to Richard's also, it matches exactly to the resolution from the Board of Trustees of the Elton Memorial Library. So it's, shall the annual contribution of the town of New Paltz provide in its budget for the operating budget of the Elton Memorial Library, a free association library, located in New Paltz, New York, be increased by $70,000 annually to the sum of $466,000 annually. The question of the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly put on a vote. Roll call, which is as follows. Supervisor Emmett absent. Deputy Supervisor Logan, aye. Councilmember Marty Irwin.
Aye.
Councilmember Kevin Berry.
I have to say no, but I want to explain why. I don't believe that Elting has complied with the registration requirements to have public election of trustees, because you have to be a contributing member to be a voting member, and that they haven't ensured that the municipality has gotten an annual budget. So I have to vote no. I know that nobody's going to love me for this, but it's just, I have to vote based upon what I read, and I think you're out of compliance.
And then Councilmember Daniel Torres.
Aye.
Aye, so at 3-1, the resolution was thereby duly adopted. So these will be forwarded by our clerk to the Board of Elections.
Thank you.
And this will be, thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Do you all want copies for my remarks?
I think, could you just file one with Roseanne for us? Thank you so much. And this will then be on our November 3rd ballot, and then this one is Roseanne's. You got it. Close my file. You guys step up for 1 moment? Does everyone want to take 1 minute break? Because I know people from the library wanted to run away. It wouldn't bother us a bit.
Sounds good.
Thank you, guys. We'll take a 1 minute break, 2 minute break.
Who do we have running?
Roseanne's giving me stink eye. So we could move on to the next piece. We have, real quickly, if everyone wants to, we have the Community Partnership Admin Marketing Strategy Update 2. It's called Infusionsoft. What this is a social marketing community messaging. I think really the important part of this whole piece is this is going to be coming out of Phoenix's grant money. The biggest part of it is, and I think that you will all find interesting, is Phoenix has worked closely to obtain permission from both our federal drug-free communities grant offices and the grant manager to reimburse the town of New Paltz for the full price of the purchase of these tools. So what I'm asking for is Phoenix would like permission and to be able to purchase for $3,029.80.
Fully reimbursed? Fully reimbursed?
100.
The town is making the purchase.
Right, and we are.
And the grant will reimburse the town.
Right.
100%.
All the documentation is the rebudgeting by the grant to reimburse.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is, some of the stuff is actually, I apologize, not going to be quite as easy, Kevin. Real quickly here, this is from the DEP. Last week, there was a meeting with the DEP. It was myself. It was myself, Mike Calamano, Stacy, Chris Marks was present at it also, and then multiple members of the DEP. And what it is they are just simply asking us to simply agree to what is written here, and just so everyone knows, we will have this up on our website tomorrow, or it might even be up right now, but if not, we will have it up tomorrow morning. There will be 5 locations within the borders of the town of New Paltz for which the DEP will be doing actual physical work on the pipe. They will be doing actually interesting, several of them that are going to be closing up what are called boat holes. Guess what they were used for?
Boats.
They used to put boats down in there and float them.
Well, down
Pretty amazing, huh?
down the line, yeah.
That's pretty amazing, wasn't it, Chris? Yeah, they actually used to put people in boats and send them down the aqueduct to do work. And hopefully they caught them the next one.
Maybe some of them are still down there.
It's a lot of shovels. A lot of shovels they're finding. They're finding things, but yeah, so they will be actually doing work and closing up some of the boat holes. They will also be doing some mechanical and structural repair. None of this, they'll also be removing some of what is called the biofilm. The biofilm is actually one of the biggest parts of this project. There is anywhere between an 1/8 and a 1/4 inch of a biofilm that is built up on the inside of the pipe. And this actual film slows the water down enough that by the time it reaches New York City, we are talking about a magnitude of, I remember, Chris, 30, 50 million gallons a day they expect to increase just by removing this film. There will be a location where they're removing some of the film. If you read through this, all of that will then be worked, the biofilm management. All of this will be overseen by everything from the DEP, the DEC, the DOT. Simply what we are doing though is they are doing all the permitting. Simply what we are doing is we are going to make a resolution authorizing me to sign on behalf of the town. Just simply that they will not be required because they are a government agency, that there is no site plan approval required, and that there is also nothing required from us, from our building department, or permitting required. But I don't want anyone to sit here and think there is not permitting required from any other agencies, because one of them involves the city and the state and the federal government. So they will be doing permitting, it just won't be through the local. So if I could just have a motion for permitting us to sign.
So moved.
Seconded.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. I'll give that to you in one moment. The New Paltz Child Care Center. There was a full discussion. There's been discussions with this over several years in the New Paltz Child Care Center. This is something that dates back. I know, Marty, you had some questions on it, I think. And I think you were directed to a few different pieces on it. And what it is the New Paltz Child Care Center. We are looking, and the community's been looking to see if this is a program. When it was originally started, this is a program that goes back many years ago. It was originally started with a grant to purchase trailers.
From the federal government.
And the grant was from the federal government. The trailers were then moved out onto school property. At the time, I'm sorry, they're not trailers.
Modular.
I apologize, modular units, where then they have wood frames on them, not steel frames on them. They do not have the ability to have wheels on them, so they are modular units. Were purchased from the school through a grant from the federal government to provide childcare. Since that time, New Paltz has changed its demographics tremendously. At the time, there was a need for childcare. Since that time, we now have just within the borders of New Paltz itself, 8 childcare facilities, which offer the same services. Also all licensed to take infants and babies, which was one of the prime reasons in driving it. And we are now at a point where we need to put it into our budget. The structure is sound at this time. So the thought is that we would like to offer it to, they are a 501c3, which is the New Paltz Child Care Center, and offer it to them at a cost of $1, and then they can continue to run it themselves and with the school, and that the town of New Paltz would no longer be in the business of providing child care.
So actually, we're in the business of doing repairs, right, Chris? That was the extent of our exposure there, right?
Yes.
And then this 501c3 would continue to contract with the school so that they can continue to stay there. It's like a lease, right?
Well, it looks like they have to start over again because the lease expired recently.
Right.
So the only additional expense that's happening to them based on this action is just that repair of the building will be on them post the lease.
Correct.
Well, and it overcomes the questions that have been raised about, well, are the folks that are there benefiting from our public dollars all residents of New Paltz? We know they're not. So that overcomes that issue because then they're a standalone 501c3 that we're not spending our taxpayers' dollars to support neighbors.
Was there any insurance implications too that'll be adjusted by losing that structure?
I'm sorry.
Not that I'm aware of, because it is on school property.
Okay.
So I'm sure they carry their own liability insurance. And
And there might be structure fire insurance that maybe we would no longer have.
right, we wouldn't be doing that. And the other piece is too, is that, if we were in an environment where there was still only 1 or 2 child care centers, I didn't even go out and count Gardner or count, any of the neighboring communities, Platica and other ones, but without knowing the actual, again, to Marty, to your point, should the town be in the job of subsidizing a child care center? And do we want to be in that business when they fully establish themselves?
Chris, the amount of subsidy per year wasn't that great though, was it?
No.
No, they did a lot of in-house repairs.
It was nominal repairs, but we just don't want to be in that position anymore. That's it, right? Nominal repairs, less than $1,000 a year?
Well, their budget used to be for repair, $2,000 a year.
Okay.
And we never came close to that.
Okay. All right, so I don't have any objection of selling the modulars to the 501c3 that's already there, correct? For $1. I don't have a problem.
And the test of this, and in speaking to Joe Moriello, is that the town board just needs to deem that there is no other use for the structure with the town. It being on school property, we don't have that ability because
Can't be put on wheels and taken someplace
it cannot be
else.
taken anywhere it is. And also that the value of the structure is of minimal value or really zero value.
Without the lease, it's $0, and if you had to move it, it's $0.
We had to move it or demolish it, it was probably equal to value of the property.
If not less. We actually had the advantage of having the people that helped us with the trailers look at it, and they deemed it as, because of the age of the structure,
Not valuable.
you cannot move it any longer. Its ability to be moved no longer exists, and so it would be a demolition expense to actually get rid of it.
So is that your motion?
Well, just very quickly, so they're governed by their own board?
They have their own board of directors.
And so we have approached them with this idea and they're okay with that?
We have discussed with them in the past, whether they're okay with it or not is a little bit of a different discussion, I believe. They do not want to take on probably fully the expense of it, but, and again, that's why it's not, as Chris said, they've done a lot of the repairs in-house. They're able to do those functions themselves. Do we want to be subsidizing child care in New Paltz?
Well, just to be fair to them, do they know that we're taking this action tonight?
They do not, it's on our agenda. I do not know they know we're taking this action tonight.
So then, the only thing I would say, and I'm not opposed to this, but I do think it would be fair to just notify them, and unless there's a time-sensitive reason that we would have to take action tonight, I would rather wait just one more meeting.
I don't mind waiting one more meeting either, but just to let you know, this has been a discussion with them for at least a year. So they know it's coming. It's
Yeah, I just don't want to like read
No,
the paper.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to table it for a meeting.
Yeah, these even predate a year. We have discussion.
We'll send them a letter telling them what
Yeah.
we're gonna do.
I have discussion
All right,
notes that
that's
go by. So we will send a letter out then to them from the supervisor's office, letting them know that this is the plan going forward. And again, that.
That's
we'll get
fine,
that.
yep.
Perfect, okay. The computer policy. This is you've all read it, I hope you all read it, and I want to make this clear. The computer equipment policy is a separate policy from the help me here, social media policy. And the reason being is the computer policy is being done more to be in compliance with New York State and to be more in compliance with the comptroller's office.
Insurance.
And plus, we will be seeing a insurance adjustment based on us having an acceptable use of town equipment policy. So really
You read it?
I read it, I just had one thing I wanted to say.
and I'll just give the really quick.
It was the section specific to blogging and social media, but it had to do with the computer in town hall.
Right.
Not
Outside.
right.
Yeah.
Not
So
not like here.
So there's, to Gene's point, and I'll just read the purpose of it. The purpose of this policy is to outline acceptable use of computer equipment at the town of New Paltz. These rules are in place to protect the employee in the town of New Paltz. Inappropriate use exposes the town of New Paltz to risk, including virus attacks, compromise of network systems and services, and legal issues. I did have a discussion with a couple different people on this, and the part that stops it also from using the social media or other networks outside of our acceptable networks, it does have unacceptable use. The following activities are in general prohibited. Employees may be exempt from these restrictions during the course of legitimate job responsibilities, e.g. System administrative staff may need to have disabled network access of a host if the host is disrupting productive services. Under no circumstances is an employee of the town of New Paltz authorized to engage in any activity that is illegal under state, local, or international law and using the town-owned assets. So what is this? You cannot go, it's just simply stating what you can use the computers for that are on town property or computers that are owned by the town. And I will also use the example of, I do believe we have several people that have laptops. Those cannot be used for any other purposes except for town business. Beyond that, we also have, this will also cover the equipment that we have out at the police station too, for which they all have mobile computer units, so that those are town-owned property.
But the police have their own policy.
They have a separate policy also, and in discussion with Joe this morning on this, he did discuss the policy on theirs, and also they have actually an ability, the police have the ability to actually see what sites they're going on to, should they deviate off of any of theirs. It's actually very difficult on their mobile computers though, so they're set up for the very custom software. So really the acceptable use of town computer equipment is really this part of it, is simply for our insurance. Also, it is getting us more in compliance with the New York State Comptroller's Office report on our last audit. So I'd like to make a motion that we...
I just have
I apologize.
That's okay. So it's section 4.2.
You want something bigger?
The third, oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I
no,
left
I'm
my
sorry.
copy at home. There we go. So it says, posting by employees from a town of New Paltz email address to news groups should contain a disclaimer stating that the opinions expressed are strictly their own and not necessarily those of the town of New Paltz, unless posting is in the course of business duties. What are we defining as news groups? And then I will further say why I bring that up.
What would you describe as a news group? Because as far as I'm concerned, you would not be allowed to do that at all.
Well, that was kind of my point, was that it didn't seem like it was town business, and I didn't think you would then should use your town email for, something that's not town business.
That, town employees update, currently, and maybe this will change, maybe this is probably just a preliminary policy.
Yeah.
Okay, because, that, comptroller's, report, we have a great deal to improve upon. But currently, departments, post their own departmental updates to the website. And that could be considered a newsgroup. And so I would not remove that if everybody's comfortable with it. And the other thing would be if you wanted to have or consider one central employee who would update the website or something like that. That's something.
So the only thing, and I hear that, but then I think that would be considered the course of business duties, which it also states in that section. So it would almost make it sound like that a news group was not the course of business of the town, based on how that's
Why
written.
don't you remove that?
Then, okay, so is that, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here, so would it be okay if we then remove section 4.2, third one?
Yeah, I don't see why they'd be expressing any opinions anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, the employees will still post. I'll use the example, is Susan and Tony, would this still be allowed? She posts, for example, onto social media news group to the Town of New Paltz Facebook page, hours of operation, Moriello Pool, if the youth center is closed. So that would all still be considered town business.
Yeah.
So that's covered under.
A lot of things could be town business.
Yeah.
That's really broad.
That's kind of. So removing 4.2.3 doesn't really affect it?
Well, it gets back, I guess, to.
Because if it says disclaimer, it almost makes it sound like I could use my town email address to make varying statements, and then as long as I write on the bottom of it that I'm not doing it as a town employee, that it would be okay. But in my opinion, you shouldn't use your town email address unless it's strictly for town business.
No judgment involved.
But there may be times when the town may have to respond using a town computer to clarify information that's in the public domain.
And then in that event, it would be town business.
Right.
So
you wouldn't have that.
You wouldn't need the disclaimer.
You wouldn't need disclaimer because it was town business, in which case the requirement for the disclaimer relating to the part before it is unnecessary.
That you should always have a disclaimer.
But see, you don't have, let me just flush that. But if you take a position on an issue without town board approval, it wouldn't be town business. But in your capacity, let's say as a town board member, you may want to express your views, so then this would make sense.
Putting in the disclaimer.
Yes.
If I were to have used a town email address in doing that.
Yes. Only if you use the town email address. If you used your own, there's a whole world of other problems. Like, what's the responsibility of fellow town board members to correct misinformation, known misinformation in the public domain? That's an interesting question. So you know, for example, that Jean Gallucci's not making $100,000 a year. She's making X amount of dollars a year. If it's in social media, do we have a duty to correct that or just be silent? It's an interesting question.
I think what my fear is with this is just that I don't see a scenario where you should not use your town. You should only use the town email address for the town business. That's all I'm saying. And I think that the phrasing makes it sound like it's okay to use it as long as you use a disclaimer.
Well, again, the town business what is town business? It's really broad. So you're gonna have employees that conduct town business through their job descriptions. You're gonna have policymakers, they make policy decisions that they may have to express their opinions in the course of making policy decisions, that they should say they're their own opinion, rather than saying this is the opinion of the town. So I understand that.
I think that the tougher thing is though too, is just because, and this is a policy written to protect. Yeah, well, one, it does have insurance applications, and it also protects the town because of it reduces liability.
It's protecting the town from a statement made by a town
Right.
employee.
Well, I mean, the tough thing is though, is,
It's protecting the town,
Right.
but it's also designed to protect the individual. And I just want to, let me just reclassify for a minute. Sure. Because I've been there, and I've been here. And I just want to say that it was written with the intent that you would hear, not they, okay? So, I'm going to use the building inspector as an example, okay? So let's say you were the building inspector and you needed to do something that falls within her role, okay? She can send out a lot of things, but if she is citing something that falls within our guidelines and our code, and she makes, we force her in her role to use independent judgment, okay? I do the same thing. Rosanna has laws, okay? But in certain roles, Chris also uses independent judgment in decision-making capacity. So does Jim Tanger. So does Chuck Gordino.
I get where we're-
Okay, it protects the employee of your employees, and it protects the town.
From being bound by her statement.
Employer, if a claim is made
Right.
against the town because of their employee,
Their statement.
okay?
That makes sense.
Look at it from over here,
Yeah.
correct?
So you protect the town in every case by saying those words, that this is not the opinion of the town, it's my opinion.
In my role,
Right. And that opinion could be wrong, so the town board will be able to correct whatever statement was made.
yes, the town board would be able to say, in their role, within the guidelines of their duties.
No, I appreciate that clarification.
All right.
All right, so I withdraw my concern.
so I'd like to make a motion that we accept the use of town computer equipment policy.
Second.
Any more conversation? All in favor? Thank you. And Jean, thank you so much for all your work on it. And again, Dan and Kevin, I know you guys both have some pieces that in the future you'd like to discuss on social media. And Dan, if you want to do a piece on social media in the future, please let us know.
I could think of one.
We have a piece here, authorization engineer for Field of Dreams concession and water for dog park. We've had some movement, some meetings up in Ulster County have produced some very good results. It looks like we are getting closer to getting sewage out to the county fairgrounds. Chris, is that accurate description? Well, here's the good news. We are getting closer to getting sewage out at the Field of Dreams. One of the things we're going to be working with them is also to, another very important piece is the county dog park. And we are going to assist them with getting water out to the dog park, because when dogs are running about and their owners, they need water. So what I'm just asking for is just approval of engineer for the Field of Dreams concession and water park for the dog.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. I can do set escrow real quick unless Marty wants to go into discussion. You wanted to add the
Update.
buildings and ground and the
Whatever
update.
sequence you wish.
If you are ready, because I do
Sure.
have one other piece here, so if you were ready.
The municipal center is something we all are going to be hearing about for a long time, as long as we keep moving the effort forward. And I would just like to do the best I can to make sure all of our neighbors are up to date as possible on what we're doing. So our committee chair is Dave Lent, and Dave couldn't be here tonight. He had another obligation, but he wanted me to make certain that I brought before the board several things. One of which is we've been looking at the demolition of the moldy existing building and have done several things towards getting to the point where we can tear it down, and we still have many things to do before we can do that. But one was there was comment in the paper last week that there had been no studies done.
Oh, I'm sorry, Marty, one second. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry. There were some comments in the paper last week regarding whether or not studies had been done on the condition of the building. What I have been able to learn is that Douglas Whitaker and his company have looked at the building. They determined that there was mold there. They told us what to do about remediating the mold in some documents, and in some of the documents that's been done. They have not evaluated what are other hazards in the building prior to demolition, such as asbestos, and there's the expectation that there's a fair amount of asbestos. So one of the things I would like us to do tonight is authorize engaging Douglas Whitaker's company to prepare a demolition plan. Another topic of interest has been where are we going to put parking? We're still working on that. And have not made any more progress than the last time we discussed, which was to put it on Moriel Pool property to meet their overflow parking needs. We are in the process of interviewing architects, as was reported last week. We are interviewing 2 architects, we believe next Wednesday and Thursday. Those dates haven't been finalized. And my understanding is that the Municipal Space Committee will be making a recommendation after that as to whom they believe would be the proper architect to do the building for us. I would like also to say that the Municipal Space Committee does still remain in place. That's a little different than what was reported in the paper. Since no motions were made or passed at our last meeting to disband it, the expectation is that there will come a point in time when there will be a joint Municipal Space Committee comprised of residents, volunteers from both the town and the village. We had discussions at our joint meeting that that might be a group of 6 people, and that there would also be a group of 4 people made up of 2 board members from each of the town and village. I think that I will eventually propose that there be 8 members on the volunteer committee, 4 from the town and 4 from the village. I can report that this group of board members, 2 from the town, 2 from the village, we are trying to schedule a date to meet, and we were thinking it'll be next Wednesday evening or Thursday evening, but that hasn't been finalized. So, having given that little report, I would like to request the board authorize engaging Douglas Whitaker and Associates to perform further required services and studies that are, and developing a demolition plan so that we can then decide whether we are ready to move forward on the demolition of the building and what we will have to do in order to accomplish that.
Marty, what's he looking at in terms of expense?
In terms of?
Did he give you a quote for that plan? He's developing a plan then, right?
He's developing a plan, but he has not given me a quote. I spoke to him this afternoon. He was on his way up to the Catskills, and we'll be following up tomorrow, and it will probably be next week before I have a formal proposal from him.
I have no problem authorizing that, but we need to know what the number is, just to have the process complete. Otherwise, we could authorize something and...
Fair point.
So, but I'm prepared to authorize it subject to the town board's approval of the number.
That's fine.
Do you have an up to amount, or are you?
No, I don't, and I'd rather not conjecture.
That's
I'm not
fine, yep,
qualified to do
yep,
that.
okay.
And I think, and Marty, I'm just gonna dig into your past too, and just in your conversations with him, does it feel, just because of the information he has, though, he would be the best price, most likely?
Oh, I can't imagine there'd be somebody else that would be more knowledgeable about that building.
They would have to start at
Yes.
0, and he already
Right.
has, okay. So should we table this until we get
Yes,
back with
that's
an
fine.
approximate? Thank you,
But
Marty.
as a poll vote, you know, the board's in favor.
I'm in favor of it, so I'll vote no. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Marty. So the next piece is the NICOMCO lease, which is all the radio controls for the town of New Paltz.
Did he get us a discount?
And because of Councilman Barry's constant request, we'll actually be saving $354 a month
More.
more.
That's great.
So not only has our prices not changed since the year 2010, we'll actually be getting new infrastructure, a new console, and the current monthly payment, it will stay at $1,556 instead of being at $1,910. So instead of $1,910 a month, we'll be paying $1,556 a month, and this includes a whole new console and includes many new radio units, microphones, all sorts of console control equipment. And I think from Bill Tuthill from there, Kevin, this is probably from you, aimed at you, which is in appreciation of the town's relationship with NICOMCO. So when they were reminded they had a long, successful relationship with us, they sharpened their pencils. So I would just like to get approval to sign a extended lease, a new lease with NICOMCO for the amount, it will be in the amount of $1,556 per month, which actually is in their budget. Gene, I believe that was also what he put into their budget?
And it's for next year.
Yep, for next year. Yep, this is all for next year, so he already put it in the budget.
So moved.
And all in favor?
Aye.
And I will give you the signed copies of these.
Thank you again, Kevin.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Real quickly, we can set, I believe the rest, and Chris, I will ask you, I believe we need to go into executive session to discuss the employees, is that correct?
Correct.
So if I can just, the establishment of escrow, we just established escrow for 3 accounts that have applications in front of our planning board. The first one is for the application of OSI Open Space Institute, River to Ridge Trail Site Plan, Planning Board 15-20. Set the escrow amount at $5,000 with a replenishment at $2,500.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
The application of Du Bois Site Plan, which is under SFR PB 15-19. This is a very simple site plan, so it will be an escrow amount of $1,000 with a replenishment of $500.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last one is a Tim Brooks 2-lot subdivision. Again, this has been viewed as a very simple one. This is under Tim Brooks 2-lot subdivision, Planning Board 15-21, in the amount of $1,000.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, guys. And thank you, Kelly, for all the hard work you do and in working with us on that.
Any budget transfers or anything?
I do not have any budget transfers unless you
No
had.
modifications?
If you had any surprises for me? No?
No, I don't
No.
see it. So what do we have left? We have
We have a highway
buildings and grounds, right?
and buildings and grounds.
And the budget?
And the one is, the last piece is, buildings and grounds, is that correct? And the budget, there is a budget schedule in all towns. They are set, the budget schedule is set by the state of New York. The tentative budget for this year is to be filed with the town clerk by September 30th, 2015. The town clerk presents the tentative budget to the town board on or before October 5th, 2015, you had to go and give it out, now they're not gonna pay attention. There we go, we've lost,
ahead.
we've
I'm
lost it,
back.
we've lost their rapt attention. They're going right to the bottom line. Town board makes revisions and prepares the preliminary budget filed with the town clerk prior to the public hearing. Notice of public hearing, at least 5 days shall elapse between the date of the first publication and the date is specified for a public hearing. Public hearing is held on or before the Thursday immediately following the general election, November 3rd. The hearing may be adjourned from day to day, but may not go beyond November 15th. The budget was submitted early. It was submitted today, actually it was submitted this afternoon to the clerk's office. And the reason was, everyone knows why, it was submitted a little early so we could do it at this meeting and we don't need to call a special meeting in submission of the budget. I also remind all board members that this budget is a living and breathing document. This is a draft budget. As the highlights on it, so everyone knows, if you look at the bottom line of it, the grand total of $7,834,730. We were allowed to take that number only up 0.73. So 73 basis points were all we were allowed to stay within the cap.
0.73%.
0.73, 73 basis points, 0.73. That's all we were allowed to do. And if my math is correct, we are at 0.68. So we were allowed to go up $99,959, and we went up $94,483. So as you're looking through the budget and you see the pieces, what is important? So if you look at something and say it's only $1,000 or it's only a few $1,000s, those do add up very, very quickly. The other critical part of staying within this is it also allows us to offer the circuit breaker to our community also. And the circuit breaker is a tax rebate formula that the state uses to rebate everyone some tax dollars based on your community being fiscally responsible. So it is a very tight budget. I know there will be lots of questions on it. We will have it up on the website tomorrow. I hear it, yeah, sure. So we will have it up on the website tomorrow. It has been filed with the clerk's office, so you can also go to the clerk's office and receive a copy from the clerk. Again, there will be probably many questions and comments. We will be scheduling special budget meetings. We may even actually be scheduling, and we will send out communications. There was much discussion tonight, and we can see there are many passions tonight on the floodplain law. So we may be scheduling a special meeting on that and also on the budget at the same time. So you may see, we may be circulating out to all the members of the town board very shortly, a piece on scheduling a meeting early on in October.
Okay.
So all we need to do is now that it's been sent out from a clerk, is accept it.
So move to accept it?
All in favor?
Second?
I'm sorry, seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So thank you very much, Jean, and thank you very much, Supervisor
Thank you,
Emmett.
Jean.
She's still smiling, so it's good.
Is there something in town hall who can put it on the website for me?
I can do it.
Yes, don't worry, we'll get, yes.
I can do it.
I will be in tomorrow,
Because I can't, with a disclaimer or no disclaimer, I still can't do it myself.
Right, exactly.
I will be in,
I can't get that far yet.
I will be in tomorrow also. There'll be more than enough people that can help you get it up on, we will get it up, do not worry, yes.
I will make copies of the budget worksheets and have it in all email boxes tomorrow.
So we have one item left, right?
We have, the item left is, actually, we just do need to, unless anyone had any other items, we do not have any prepaid transfer budget modifications. Does Roseanne would like us to do any minute, or put that off for the next meeting?
There we go.
We can go to the next meeting. Then I would just simply, she said yes.
You did?
I would like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the employment of an individual.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. You want I'd like to make a motion, we come out of executive session.
Deja vu, second?
All over again? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. So in executive session, we did make let's see.
Decision.
I don't have the rate down here on here, though. I apologize.
part-time municipal worker?
Yes,
Part-time municipal worker.
One?
yep, and
Well, no, right
No.
now it's part-time seasonal, which is
It's-
1561.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chris. That we will be extending a part-time, a 20-hour per week position, which will be a part-time seasonal at a rate of $15.61 per hour. Is that correct?
Yes.
There you go. Thank you, Chris. Unless anyone had any other business, I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Did we vote
Was that a
on that?
motion?
Oh, we didn't vote?
Yeah, we didn't vote.
You need a
You
second.
don't want to vote?
I would like to vote, yeah.
Somebody want to
You
second
wanna
it
vote?
first?
I'll second it.
I thought you seconded.
I think I did. No, I
No.
didn't. I didn't second. You seconded
I
it?
just
All in
seconded.
favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Is that for the adjournment?
No, we gotta adjourn.
No.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.